I'm Dr. Pete Economo, the East Coast psychologist.
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin, the West Coast psychologist.
And this is When East
Meets West.
So lately I've been thinking about just trying to liberate from all the things in life that are just holding me down. What's up, Nikki?
I mean, I like to imagine that that's a dialogue that you're having in your mind. Like, how do I liberate myself from all of the things that are holding me down? Is that, I mean, I can imagine you having a thought like that.
Well,
So,
of course you could, like the two scholars that we are. But actually, maybe because you're so smart, maybe you could. What's your like English definition or like understanding of liberation, even as we say it? Because I'm thinking some listeners are like, "What's that?"
yeah, I mean, I think, when liberation is freedom, it's interesting because
Yes.
I mean, I like that you brought up this as a topic you want to discuss because it's not a word I use, honestly.
Mm,
Like I talk about freedom a lot in therapy with
yeah.
people, and because it's a value and like, what does that mean to feel a sense of freedom? But I don't know, it's just kind of interesting when you like liberation is not I mean, and then it's making me think of like, we live in the United States, like the word liberty is a big part of
Yep.
sort of
Yep.
like the American, story
Sure.
that we like to tell, or our country likes to tell. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's an interesting, I don't know. And as we're sitting with it, I'm trying to think about like, does the word liberation sit with me differently than freedom? And I mean, part of this conversation, I think I'm going to figure it out because I think it does.
Well, I think.
How about for you?
Well, I think you're experiencing a real-time relational frame theory because you're trying to
Yeah,
build all these connections between these two words, and they are different. You're right, and it's not normal vernacular of like everyday life to use the
sure.
word liberate. But of course, in your smartness that you are, most dictionaries will give freedom as part of the definition. So shocker there
Yes.
that my intelligent co-host here. But look, it's about just getting free from imprisonment or oppression. And so I've thought to bring it up because I was studying the doors of liberation. And so this is a Buddhist philosophy
Mm,
around, freedom. A lot of Buddhism is teaching us how do we get rid of all the things that usually we're putting in front of ourselves or suffering, because that's
yeah.
like the
Yep.
ultimate sort of goal is
Hmm.
getting free from suffering. And so the three doors of liberation are emptiness, signlessness, and aimlessness. So I'll break that down a little bit over the course of this.
Yeah, please. I would love
Yeah,
to hear, you know,
yeah,
what those mean. I mean, I've got some sense of it, but I'm
yeah.
sure our listeners are also like, especially signlessness. I'm
I
particularly curious about
know.
that one.
Well, I'll go to that then because signlessness for me too, I was curious about because
Yeah.
sign for those SIGN, because also as I've read it and heard
Yes.
myself saying out loud, like it can mean so many different things or sound like other things. But
Yes.
it's about meaning that we give to things. So things become signs, so that,
Yes.
yeah, like rain is a sign, lightning is a sign, the ocean is a sign. There's meaning that we give to it. And so that creates that imprison us. It imprisons us to it only being
Mm.
that.
Yeah, okay. I think this is cool because it's like, look, and then, obviously, depending on what our listeners ascribe to or what their beliefs are, there might be people
Yeah.
out there that are like that really, they do look for meaning and they do look for signs and
Yeah.
things. And, I think what's always interesting is that however we
Yes.
experience the world through the prism of our human brain.
That's right.
And our human brains uh, have language, and our human
Yes.
brains have the ability to try to put stories onto everything that we do.
Everything.
And
Yeah.
I think there isn't, and I'm not, and by the way, for listeners, I'm not trying to say that there aren't signs or that there are. I don't, like, I don't know anything. I don't know what is and what's not. But I know what the Buddhist concept is trying to get at is to say, you know, letting go of signs would be letting go of the human practice of um, attaching meaning to something,
Yeah.
to free yourself from like whatever stories your mind is telling you. Is that, I mean,
That's exactly
am
yep.
I sort of on the right track? Yeah.
Nail on
Okay.
the head. And so it's not to say that you can't, you don't want to fully attach in a concrete kind of way that's the
Totally. That's
only
the part.
meaning,
Yes.
So
Yes, it doesn't.
yeah.
What's dialectical, right? That's why I would say it's not. It's not to say we're not allowed to experience meaning or believe that there's meaning in things. It's actually just saying like it can't just be that.
That's right.
Right. Because that's what we do as human beings. We're like, nope, this is the answer. This is the thing.
Yes. Yeah. It's like the ocean is the ocean. It's meant for surfing only, or whatever, that's a shout out to you all.
I know that's my jam. Yeah. Yes. I got it. Yeah. I got it.
Just want to make sure that our listeners understand that you got it.
Yes.
Yes. So, and so I love that you, of course, brought in the Western idea of the brain, because the brain is always going to be associated with that. So that's the signless. Emptiness is a little easier, because if you've done any kind of mindfulness or read anything Buddhist related, that the whole goal is just to get empty, that there's clear of thought, clear of emotion, clear of meaning, clear of everything. And that's like the nothingness. And a lot of the three doors of liberation, just for a little bit more context, is built on the Eastern tradition. Now there's a couple different schools of Buddhism. So this one is a little bit more Japanese, where it is actually focused more on interconnectedness. So all of these, like the emptiness, signlessness, aimlessness, is all about interconnectedness. Because in order to be liberated, you have to realize that my anger towards you is anger towards me. My throwing garbage out the car window is destroying the earth, which is me. Everything is connected. I'll park that.
No, well, I think this is where, I love obviously having these conversations, because it's like, it's very complex stuff, right?
Yes,
and I think a lot of times when listeners come to this, it might be the first time they're hearing some of these. And I certainly know the first time that I encountered these concepts, it took a while for me to sort of understand or connect to what they're meaning. And so I actually want to go back to what you were saying about the goal of mindfulness is to be in nothingness. I think it's like, we actually want to be careful in how we're explaining that to people, because a lot of times people come to us like in therapy and they'll say, I tried to clear my mind. And I'll say, actually, no, you can't do that. Like, that's not your human brain. It can't do that. And if you're practicing and, Buddhism, it's like what Pete's getting at is you're trying to move towards, I mean, tell me if there's a better way to say this, being pure awareness, which is like letting go of ego, letting go of the control of the mind, and getting to a place where you are experiencing the interconnectedness of the world, like all of the structures that we create fall away. And, that most humans aren't going to get there. Most of us aren't going to get there. So I think that's just important to like distinguish. It's like, some of us can maybe say that we've had moments where we taste that or we touch on that. But most of us, again, if you're like a Buddhist monk, like, and you spend 30 years where you meditate hours a day, every day, it's like those folks, like they've devoted their life to experiencing that. Yeah, right. And they maybe get so anyway, I just want to say, like, when you're saying, and we're humans, when you're saying the goal of it is to do this, it's like, I think we want people to be careful not to say like it's where the practice is asking you to move towards. So it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong if you can't let go of your ego or period.
Yep. And the nothingness is also about on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmental. So that's the definition of mindfulness we often give. And so the more I can lean in and do things like that, the closer I'm going to get to nothingness, the closer I'm going to get to liberation, where I'm going to be able to recognize that everything is connected. Because I'm also with you, Nikki, like when I first started learning this, that made no sense to me. And it and I remember like in grad school being like staring at trees and trying to like meditate and watch them and see if I could like feel connected to it. And I wasn't high. For the record, I wasn't high. I wasn't on
Right. It's because it's like a way of like, again, it's so hard, especially when you're raised in a Western culture, to get away from the much more linear, like logic oriented sort of approach to being, and it's like all humans have that, but there are certain obviously practices like Buddhism where you're from the get-go trying to work with that design. I'm curious if we can, have so we're talking as you and I usually do, right? Where we've got, it seems far away, but we're coming back to liberation. come back, tell me about the aimless part, because I also think that's really cool and interesting.
So cool and so hard in Western world. And like I fail at it often because it's really about like not seeking. So some of it's based on material and a lot of it's based on achievement. And so as an overachiever, high performer, self-identified, I feel perhaps that's why I'm not liberated, because I having a midlife crisis of getting some fancy sneakers, which doesn't seem to fit into aimlessness.
Sure. So it's so it's again about like, it's really like about being, it's so funny. It's just the languaging here, which I'll say something about that in a moment, but I'm hearing that about it. It's like just really being rooted in the moment without the seeking is about something outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
But again, and I think it's always funny, and I brought this up many times in different episodes of the translation aspect, because it's like, I bet a lot of listeners hear the word aimless sounds like hopeless. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times people come to me in therapy and they'll be like, I feel aimless. And a lot of the values work we do is around like connect to not feel aimless, right? In a different context, like to feel connected to oneself and like, what steps do you want to take? But I think that is actually aligned with what you're talking about in the concept of liberation, right?
Yeah, I think it's just your gorgeous behavioral brain that's going to hear and interpret in the way that it does, which is, you're 100% right. It's like getting back into aim, rather than staying aimless. But, again, I think that is really the challenge of the practice of this Eastern stuff, especially as Westerners. You and I were born and raised in the West. It's not inherent in us to be empty. It's not inherent to be aimless or signless.
Well, why would I say it's not? But I would say it's not inherent in anybody, right? That's, I think, what's interesting. It's like these things were I was about to say invented, but they weren't invented. It's like the understanding. This we can get really seemingly out there, but it's not. This understanding of reality, which a lot of these practices, that's really what they're about. Is like, how is reality actually designed? And they start by recognizing the limitations of humans, and we're all every human is designed linearly towards judgment, towards control. It's just that we grew up in a culture that sets up like systems that reinforce that, as opposed to like trying to set up teachings that are about how do we work with this limitation. Like, I think American culture maybe looks at our linearness as a strength in a lot of ways, which maybe it is sometimes, but
Well, and maybe it's that we're saying, because I'm thinking, I do think it's inherent. So I'm going to gently disagree with you here.
Okay,
because
sure.
I'm going to say, like, coming out of the womb, we're not like seeking and we're really just in the moment. I think it's our, nature, nurture.
But aren't we? But we are seeking. We're seeking food and shelter, right?
And, because I have to live, right?
That's what I'm saying. It's like the humanness part of it, But I hear you too. You're saying we're not seeking money and like attention. Well, we are seeking attention, I guess, when we come out of the womb. We are. That is because we need to get our needs met.
We need our needs met. Yeah. So Maslow's hierarchy there, but it's. I think it's more contextual that the West has really, like you said, systemically kind of reinforced all of this and kind of pushed us against each other to get to a place of achievement. And so I want to be liberated, though, to be clear. I want freedom.
Sure. I think, same. And I think, look, I also think there's like an important thing to say. We always say this on this podcast, and this is like very mindfulness aligned, of like, we'll never just feel totally free. Like, we are living in our human bodies. So it's like knowing how to let go and contact freedom and liberation, and then also accepting that you'll go back to trying to control outcomes and pain and all that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's just the thing I'm always like very curious about and always like very careful with, is that any of these concepts that are helpful, our brains can hijack that and then say, great, let me, what's the algorithm so that I'm just liberated, And it's like, but that's not what we're doing, actually,
Well, because we're all looking for the quick fix too here in the West, right?
Correct. Well, and the permanent fix.
A quick permanent fix, because the truth is, if there was a pill for that, Nikki, I would be the first online.
Yeah, sure. Who wouldn't? Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
Well, I'm going to leave us with a quote as we end this idea of liberation for today. So just as the great ocean has one taste, the taste of salt, so also this teaching and discipline has one taste, the taste of liberation.
This has been When East Meets West. I'm Dr. Pete Economo.
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin. Be present, be brave.
This has been When East Meets West. All material is based on opinion and educational training of Drs. Pete Economo and Nikki Rubin.
Content is for informational and educational purposes only.